So, when you became a dad, do you have any problems with bonding with the baby?
Other than the physical side of bonding with the baby, because obviously with my baby being in special care for so long, it wasn't as simple as just picking baby up out of a cot and holding them close. It was straight away from the birth, from the C-section. You know, baby was wrapped up in a towel, and I had a little hold when he was first born. But then obviously he was kind of whisked away, and getting him out of his incubator was a little bit of a challenge at times. But it was something that you sort of got used to, and you can obviously lean on a lot of the staff in that kind of setting. In terms of sort of further down the line, I guess the thing that really surprised me was everyone bigs up becoming a first time dad as this sort of instantaneous moment of you absolutely love and would die and do anything for this baby. But I didn't really feel that at the time. Whether or not at the time I was thinking it's just because of like the anxiety around the pregnancy and the difficulties we're having, and not sort of getting too ahead of myself. But realistically, from the conversations that I've had with other dads and through the work, the training that I've done through Dad Matters as well, is you're not really supposed to necessarily feel that bond straight away. It's something that kind of builds over time. So I went the first couple of weeks sort of thinking, oh God, like I've not like bonded and attached with this baby. When in reality, I was probably being a bit hard on myself. What about yourself?
I don't know. I think it's a bit of a blur now. Obviously, it's a long time ago, but I've always said I had that instant bond. But as you know yourself, my son was taken special care as well, but unexpectedly. And for, like the first few hours of his life, I was sat in special care with him, waiting for my partner at the time to come out to theatre. And I put obviously I opened the door and not the door, sorry, the little flaps. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And I put my hand in, and he grabbed hold of my finger, and he literally kept hold of my finger for 3-4 hours. And obviously, I had loads going on through me, but I think I don't know whether looking back on it now, I don't know whether it was the moment he was born, the moment he was passed to me, or whether it was them 4 hours of just. Well, I weren't sat in silence. I was talking to him, but obviously he wasn't very chatty, to be honest with you. So it was like, obviously, as I say, like his way of communicating with me was just holding my finger. And I don't know whether it comes from there. I don't know whether it comes from the moment he was passed to me. But I did feel that. But I've worked with a lot of dads doing what we do, which haven't felt that. And I think one that sticks out in my mind was I weren't even somebody who was supporting on a one-to-one basis. It was what started off initially as universal support. So I was in Western Hospital scan clinic, and the dad came out. Him and his partner being out for a scan. The dad came out, and the partner went to the desk to check in for the next appointment. And he started talking to me, made a joke about me waiting for a scan. And I just rubbed my belly, like, I'm not that big, am I? And he was like, oh, I didn't mean it like that. And yeah, so I started chatting to him, and I asked him, like, well, are you aware of, like, hormonal changes that go on within yourself, and how baby and dad, like, bond, and how baby attaches with dad? And he was like, well, no. And so, obviously, I explained to him, I was like, well, when baby comes along, dad's testosterone levels drop by 30%. The reason they drop by 30% is so that dad can release more oxytocin. And oxytocin is the bonding hormone. I said, but what happens is mum is releasing oxytocin when she's pregnant. When the baby comes along, she continues to release oxytocin. Mum and baby form what is called a nurture bond. So mum and baby both release more oxytocin when mum's nurturing for the baby. So when she's cuddling, when she's feeding, that type of thing. Dad and baby actually release more oxytocin when they're playing. So dad and baby form what's called a nurture and challenge bond. Now, these bonds, about the difference, they're both equally as important to baby, but they are different. And so I explained to him, said, but because some dads struggle with playing when baby first comes along and baby's small and fragile, and that release of oxytocin can be delayed. I said, some dads don't feel that instant bond. I said, and obviously that bond can be delayed. Sometimes it's delayed up 4 to 6 months, but men being men and dads being dads quite often don't feel, like, don't talk about the fact that they didn't feel that instant bond, because obviously there's this, men don't talk about the feelings anyway. Plus there's that expectation that you love your child, that it's an instant ground moving, world changing moment, and they don't, as I say, they don't feel like they can talk about it. And I literally seen the light bulb switch in this lad's head, and he was like, I wish I met you 9 years ago. I was like, what do you mean? He said, well, he said, I've got another child. He said, my son, he's 9 years old. He said, don't get me wrong. He said, we've got a fantastic relationship, really close. He went, but that's how I felt when my son came along. He said, I didn't feel that instant bond. He said, explaining that, he said, I can let that guilt go. He said, I've carried guilt with me for 9 years for not feeling that instant bond. And because you've explained it, he said, obviously you can then let that guilt go. So because of obviously what he'd said, we then went on and covered a bit of like how to promote bonding and attachment. So we spoke about how he could promote that bonding before baby even comes along. We spoke about the fact that from 24 weeks, baby could hear his voice, how speaking, singing, talking to the baby, reading to the baby, even while baby's still in the womb, how that can help create that bond, how baby can get used to dad's voice, so that baby can recognize dad's voice when baby's initially born. Spoke about how planning and thinking about the baby, how that can promote bonding with him. So thinking about what colour eyes the baby's going to have, what colour hair the baby's going to have. At the time, he didn't know what gender it was, so thinking about what gender it was, possible names, and just that planning for the future. And it incorporates baby into your life long before baby even arrives in the world. We covered.
Start making it feel real, isn't it? You know, a lot of people are in denial that what's actually happening is you know, especially if it's your first and you've not got a lot of experience, you're humanizing your baby by doing that from such an early age, and obviously by picturing all these things, it's, you know, it's naturally it's going to help, isn't it?
Well, that's it. I think it just makes it a little bit more real as well. And so obviously, I'm sure yourself as well, you met some dads and you speak to them and they're like, yeah, I was cool right the way through the pregnancy. Then the baby came along and it was like, oh God, this is actually happening. Yeah. As if they haven't had 9 months notice, you know what I mean? But it is, I think obviously putting them steps in place, it can only help. It can only help. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, dad might have been getting that bond regardless of whether they've made these early steps and whether they've done these things to create the early bond. And obviously it doesn't really matter what dad's saying, it doesn't matter what dad's singing. It's not the way, it doesn't have to be Humpty Dumpty. It could be his favourite song, it could be an Oasis track. It's more about the tone of dad's voice, about the tempo, the volume. And at the end of the day, baby can't hear his voice, but then they haven't developed language skills yet. So it could be, like, for me, a big one for me is I used to love singing Liverpool songs, which I know is not everyone's cup of tea. I know obviously there is other football clubs available. There's also other sports teams. But as I say, for me, it was, I didn't actually know any nursery rhymes. So my bonding with my son was very much based around Liverpool songs, not sung at the top of my voice like I would when I go to the match, but obviously they were done in an appropriate fashion.
Yeah, well, that's it, and you're sharing one of your interests in doing that, aren't you? You know, so, you know, no doubt you're associating those happy feelings of, you know, singing songs from the match, or, you know, like your favorite songs, or talking about your favorite subjects. You're probably building an association between those happy feelings and those happy hormones that are getting released when you're listening to music or things like that with baby. So it's going to be beneficial to you to do that from such an early age. And, you know,
to be honest, to be honest with you, he was born around the time Roy Hodgson was the manager, so the
So
feelings
they
weren't
weren't very
always
happy.
that happy. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, well, and it's true what you say. Even when baby arrives, it's you can read them books, and obviously, they don't understand what you're saying, but it's just the tone of your voice, and it gets them interested in things. And I'd, I'd like to think, I mean, my little lad is really, really good with his speech, and obviously, every child is different. Children deliver at different rates, but I like to think that at least it's in some small part due to the amount of reading and the amount of talking that I do with my baby. It's dead easy, like looking at people with prams who are walking past with a newborn in it, and it's fine. Everyone's entitled to, like some quiet time and a quiet 15 minutes. But I don't know about you, but when I was pushing my little lad in his prime, I just constantly talking to him, just like, oh, look, there's a bus going past, a nice big green bus. And like, oh, look, you see that bird going past there, and just talking to him again. He probably didn't understand what I was saying, but just introducing him to those sort of concepts and things, will help his development. But it no doubt, just listening to me chunnering on and on and on and on, it's hopefully had a good impact on that side of things as well.
Well, it will have done. I don't know whether you've seen any of the research done. There's been quite a lot of research done over the last 5-10 years. So basically, baby's brain develops from the bottom up and from the back to the front. So the brain stem's the first part that develops, which is here. So that's all the core processes, your heartbeat, your body temperature, things like that. Things that babies are just born and are able to do. Then in the middle, you've got the amygdala, which controls like your fight or flight, your reflexes. And then the next part to develop is the cortex, which comes across the top. And that's where language skills are developed. So when baby comes along, that talking to baby develops them language skills as the brain's developing. It puts them pathways in place. And it's not my opinion, it's scientific fact that the fact that you're speaking to your child and explaining things, describing words, putting names on things, it makes a massive difference, not only to the bond and attachment, but to the brain development of your child. For me, I do what I do, and I go out and I take a very personal approach to what I do. But then, yourself, you've got to go into them certain meetings where you've got your professional head on, you're being very professional, you're talking almost as if you know what you're talking about, well, you'll at least pretend to. And I went into a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and my youngest is 5 now, by the way, so she's not a baby anymore. It's not, I do still call her the baby, but I went into the meeting and she went to one of the other services that was there. The lady went, "Was you in the Lidl last night?" Now I knew I'd been in the Lidl last night with my daughter, and I was like, "Yeah," and she went, "I was seeing you." And when your heart sinks, because I weren't being very.
Oh no, what
I'm
was
not
I
gonna
doing?
lie. And she said, "Well, actually, I heard you," and I was like, oh. But she did go on. She went, "To be honest with you," she went, "I just heard you and your daughter going up every aisle. We were laughing, both of you laughing, which obviously put me a little bit more at ease." But it was obviously kids don't want to go shopping, kids don't want to buy food. It's not entertaining for them, but I've always made it a game, so I can't. Now she's 5, she's not going to let me stop it being a game. Do you get what I mean? And it's the naming things, and I'll pretend to sneeze, and I'll swizzle the trolley round, but it's again, as daft as it sounds, I've managed, and I'm fortunate enough to have made a situation like going to shops a bonding exercise with my daughter. And as I say, she's 5 now, and it's still something that we do together, and it's amazing. It really is.
It's great. It's great that you can do that. You're turning something every day that you're going to have to do every week into a positive thing, and it's something that, regardless of it being like a menial task and something that you can't really be asked doing at times, to her it's something that's exciting and something that it's spending time with you. And like you were saying about sort of worrying about, oh God, what if they see me doing? It works both ways, doesn't it? And it's one of them where you can have these impacts on your baby. And it's amazing how much they can take in. It's the negative sides of that as well that you've just got to be really mindful of. if you're letting like the stress overtake you, sometimes you're letting things get a bit on top of you. Although you're just thinking, oh well, he's just a baby, he doesn't understand when I'm losing my temper. Just having that sort of raised voice and losing your temper a little bit, it might have kind of a knock-on effect. They pick up more than you would expect.
Well, that's it. And I think sometimes, like an analogy I use with a lot of the dads I work with is, you get up in the morning, you walk down the stairs, there's water all over the floor, the washing machine's leaked, it's sipped the lecky, the fridge freezer's gone off, you open the freezer, water comes rushing out the freezer, the washing machine's got a leak, it's sipped the lecky, everything's gone off, you're going to have to get the washing machine fixed, you're going to have to replace all the food in the freezer, and then your baby knocks a cup of milk over in the living room. How are you going to react? And we're all human, mate. But I'm not sitting here by any stretch of the imagination saying I wouldn't overreact myself, and I would. Conversely, you wake up in the morning, the sun's shining through the window, you come downstairs, everything's fine, you get a text message off Camelot, you've won 10 grand on the lottery, and your kid knocks the milk over, and it's like, oh, sod it, lad, we'll buy a new carpet. And for us, obviously, it's two very different situations, but our children don't understand that the freezer's on the blink or the washing machine, and they don't understand that we've just won. All they know is they've knocked the milk over, and dad's reacted two totally different ways. And I think putting that in perspective and having that minute and that breath before we react to the situation, it creates a much healthier bond, and the child will then know how you're going to react. As I say, we've all done it. We've all made that mistake where we know what we're doing is wrong, but we've done it and things like that. But that's the beauty of rupture and repair. There's nothing stopping you going back to your child and saying, listen, really sorry. You should have been more careful. You shouldn't have knocked your cup over, but I understand Dad overreacted and I apologise for that. And that, obviously, you have overreacted, but then putting that repair in place and repairing that well, as I say, it's rupture and repair, but so your child knows that, well, actually, there is going to be ruptures, there's going to be times, even when they're little and they're crying, well, actually, I'm crying because I want to be held, and Dad's in the middle of doing the dishes, so Dad's going to take 2 minutes or 3 minutes while he finishes doing the dishes, but he is going to come and pick me up, and I know he's going to come and pick me up. I might carry on crying so he knows I still want to be picked up, but I'm not distressed because I know he's going to come and get to me, or obviously, or mum. And it does, and it builds resilience. So I think sometimes mums and dads panic too much that they need to pick the baby up straight away. But as long as baby knows that you're going to do it promptly, it doesn't have to be the second baby gives them cues or starts to cry. And
it's not as deep as that, is it? You know what I mean? They don't have that sort of, as you were mentioning about brain structure, they don't have that in, pre-built into them. All they know is that they've got a certain feeling and they've got a certain a certain need that needs meeting to make that feeling better or make that feeling go away. They're not going to hold it against you if you take an extra couple of minutes to get round to them. Obviously, not every time. You don't want to be leaving them for half an hour, but it's something where those extra few moments just for you to get yourself sorted, it's going to benefit you both, because you're going to be in a better space to deal with it once you've taken those couple of minutes to finish what you're doing.
Well, that's it. And quite often, if you do rush to get the baby, it's half measures. So you're not paying the baby the attention that the baby needs, and you're not finding what it is that baby needs to change, because you're more concerned about stuff that you've just been doing and that you're trying to finish. Like, for example, if you've got something on in a pan, you're not going to want it to burn and put things back and things like that. And I think for me, it's a big thing as well, because some of the dads that I've worked with, again, they work away from home, and mum takes on all this responsibility, and she thinks she should be tending to baby the minute baby gets upset and things like that. And mum puts a bit too much pressure on herself, which then has dad worrying, and dad's worrying about mum, and he's worrying about, because he's away from home, how he's going to bond with the child, and just letting them know, well, actually, if mum does need to finish what she's doing and then pick up your child, it can be it can actually be beneficial to child and build resilience with that rupture and repair. As you say, don't leave it too long. Don't leave them to cry it out, because there's still that cortisol release in the brain. If you leave them to cry it out, they might have stopped crying, but they've still got that stress hormone in the brain. But that won't happen if it's a couple of minutes while mum finishes what she does, or what dad finishes what he does.
Yeah, and there's a lot of guilt with dads working away as well, but it's and sort of worry around bonding and attachment. But one thing that I'd probably reassure any of the dads, which I'm working with at least, is you don't have to be holding or talking to baby 24/7. It can be as little as 15, 20 minutes at a time. And it's even a short burst like that makes a huge difference at those early stages. They call it the golden 20 minutes for a reason. Like when you're holding on to baby, it's enough to get those juices flowing and to get to sort of improve that bonding.
Well, that's it. And as you say, the golden 20 minutes, it's only, especially in the early days, babies are only in the quiet alert state for about 15, 20 minutes. So regardless of if you want to spend more time with them, you're only going to get that peak interaction for that 15, 20 minutes. And it's about understanding it's quality of time, not quantity. And like, again, for both mums and dads, it's better for baby to have mum for 18 hours a day at 100% than 19 hours a day at 80%. And I'm using now hours because obviously you do sleep for a couple of hours. And it's the same with dad as well. And mums and dads now, it's a very different role. I'm explaining that because obviously I'm not saying mums don't as well, but part of dad's role of being dad is still going out, providing for his family, keeping a roof over his head, keeping a roof over the baby's head, and keeping food on the table. And I know mums do that as well. I'm not taking that away from mum, but as much as dads are expected to be a lot more hands-on now, they still need to provide for the family. And it's explaining to dads sometimes, well, actually, I know you want to be hands-on, but part of your role is to provide for your family, and giving them tips over on how to bond with the child if they are working away, or whether they're working on a shift or things like that, and explaining how when they take the t-shirt off at the end of the day, maybe not throw it straight in the wash, maybe leave it with mum so mum can swaddle, not swaddle, can use dad's t-shirt as a bit of a blanket the next day. And obviously baby's getting that sense of dad, because like, I know it's probably not something we pick up on, but you've seen it with babies. If mum walks into a room, the baby can smell that breast milk instantly. It's not something as adults we pick up on, but it's a scent that babies will pick up on. It's same with the scents from dad's clothes. Video time is fantastic. So the FaceTime, so the baby can actually see dad's face, the baby can hear dad's voice, and just because dad's not physically present doesn't mean they can't still build the bond both before and while dad's away.
Yeah, and even harping back to the very beginning of this conversation around special care, when we had our little one in special care for a few weeks, we had bonding squares. So it was a little square of crocheted wool essentially, and every night before bed, my wife had took one underneath a top, and I'd put one underneath the pillow, and then the next day bring them in and swap them out with what's in there. So even when we weren't there, our little one could still smell our smells as we were, when we weren't there. And again, you don't know how much of a difference it makes in real terms, but it's something that I'm glad that I did. And it's something that I'm glad that I had the opportunity to do that, because when you're faced with barriers such as special care or working away or anything like that, any little sort of boost or any little extra thing you can do, it could make all the difference,
Well, and I think, again, you're all right. You don't know how much of a difference it makes, but at the same time, again, you could looking at the science. If mum goes back to work, she's still breastfeeding. If she takes baby's baby grow with her when she's expressing, if she holds the baby's baby grow to her face, the smell of the baby, it produces more milk, and that is measurable. So if it
Yeah.
if it helps with more, then logic would dictate that it does have a massive difference. It does make a massive difference. And you know yourself, like, again, going back to the voice and dad's voice, and you walk, like, mum walks into a room, baby can smell the milk. He starts turning, or she starts turning. Same with dad's voice. From a very, very young age, if dad walks into a room and starts talking, the first thing baby does is turn his head. He wants to see dad. He wants to engage with dad. And there's no denying it. It's not something that we're guessing. You can see, physically see it. And dads and mums can look at their own children and watch them do these things. They're given the cues all the time. And the stronger that bond is, and the more we interact with our children, the more they respond to dad's voice, dad's sense, and mum's sense, and mum's voice. And it's great when you see it. And it's great for me, like when I speak to dads, and dads are maybe feeling like they haven't bonded, and I say to them, well, actually, when you go home from here, just speak. Make sure the baby can't see you, and speak and watch what the baby does. And literally 9 times out of 10, probably 99 times out of 100, the next week you meet the dad and he's like, the minute I open my mouth, the baby turns to me. And I was like, well, the bond is there. Do you know what I mean? And it's just that sometimes you don't notice this. Sometimes it just takes a little bit more work.
Yeah. And obviously further down the line as well, like beyond sort of the baby stages, obviously that it's a little bit sort of outside of my remit. My lad's only 3, and you know, I've kind of been with him his whole life. But if you ever find yourself where you don't have a relationship with a child for any period of time, I'd urge, I mean, I work with dads who haven't had contact with the babies for extended periods of time for you know, numerous reasons. It's never too late to make that sort of behavioural change to build a bond and to build a relationship with your child. Obviously, the chemical side of things is very, you know, is different as they get a little bit older. But you know, I wouldn't say to any dad who, you know, maybe has like a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old who they've not been seeing, that it's pointless trying, because you know, having that relationship and having that, you know, that contact with your child after, even after sort of months and years, is really, really important. It's again, when you're looking at outcomes, you know, children, no matter at what stage, you know, you read into their lives or enter their lives, the outcomes are significantly more positive if you're there than if you're not. So any dads who don't have contact for whatever reason, and you know, they're sort of wondering what the point is, then there definitely is a point, and I definitely urge you to do that. You know.
100%. And like, it's so obviously, I know in the early days, the brain development and the pathways which make them connections easier, they can be built a lot faster when babies are little. But even if that's not present, that doesn't necessarily mean them connections haven't been made. But if they haven't, then they can still be made a lot later in life. But again, I mean, a bit of a personal question, Tom, but how old was you when you met your wife?
21.
21. Do you love your wife?
Yeah.
Yeah. but you didn't meet her until you were 21. You could still form that bond. You could still form that love. And it's the same with parents, same with children. We're all,
I mean, a man's brain doesn't fully develop until what, 30, 31 or something?
25, they reckon, for the prefrontal cortex.
Right.
But as I say, like, it doesn't matter what stage. I've got 5 children, which you know yourself. You hear me speaking about quite a lot. Now my eldest 2 are actually stepsons. I don't differentiate between any of them, but the reason I'm explaining that is obviously because of what I do. I've got a bond with my stepsons. I love them. They get treated no different to any of my other kids, and I'd like to think they'd say they've got a bond with me, and that's not taken away from anything that they have or they haven't got with the biological father. But I created that bond with my sons at a later date. And that weren't because of anything. It was just simply because I met their mum at a later date. But me, and I don't even know whether he might be floating about somewhere, but me and our Cal, we're as close as any father and son could be, really. And I wouldn't change. If anything happened to his mum and she weren't here no more, I don't think that wouldn't affect our bond. If anything, it'd make it stronger. Do you know what I mean? I love him with all my heart, and that was somebody who obviously he was a little bit older when I met his mum, and it's not had any adverse effect at all on our relationship. The fact that I weren't there when he was born, so nobody would ever convince me otherwise, that you can't build them bonds and you can't build that love and relationship.
No, well, it's the same thing with non-biological parents, even in the early stages, isn't it? I mean, all the research points to the fact that if, for example, you've had birth through a surrogate, or you've adopted, or anything, or even if it's a same-sex couple, it's something where whoever takes on that dad role, as long as you're doing the things which encourage these chemical changes, they still occur. Like even in homosexual couples, if one of you takes on more of a dad role than a mum role, then you start producing the same chemicals that a biological dad would. So the science is all there to back it up as well.
Well, that's it. And as you say, like, it doesn't have to be the person that was there at conception. It could be, as you say, somebody who's adopting. It could be somebody who's fostering. And I think obviously, like, a big thing that I talk about is skin to skin contact. So the fact that when you've got your son or your daughter on your chest, and as I say, it doesn't have to be biological, but you've got your child on your chest, and his or her heartbeat syncs with yours, a breathing syncs with yours, a body temperature syncs with yours. You can't help but feel that togetherness. And like, we all do it. Like, we'll all sit and watch TV for an hour. Now, if we're sat watching TV for an hour and the baby's in a Moses basket next to us, why not just have the baby on our chest while we sit there? Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't have the baby on my chest while I was watching a football game because I'm a little bit more up and down. But if I was watching my favourite series on TV or whatever, then having that bond and having that time to just synchronise together, it's magic. It really is. And as you say, that could be granddad, that could be uncle, that could be whoever it is that's assuming that role of dad. As I say, it could be two dads in a relationship that are both assuming the dad role. Could be a mum in a lesbian relationship where one of the mums particularly wants to take on a dad role and the other one wants to hold the mum role. It is what it is, and the brain is very clever. And the fact that we don't know why dad's testosterone levels drop when baby's born, but they do. We can measure it. The science is there. We don't know why, because there's no physical connection there, but it happens. And it's that emotional connection that triggers these chemical releases in our brains. But it happens, and it can be measured. And it's just, I find it fascinating. I know I'm a bit of a bore when it comes to the sciencey stuff, but I just find it fascinating.
But you'd much rather be dealing with the facts that are in front of you, the research that's been done, because there's a lot of stuff flying around out there, and old wives' tales about things, and at the end of the day, it's difficult to know what to believe nowadays. So having that evidence to back it up, to go alongside sort of the lived experience and everything else that we do, that's the important thing. It's backed by science, and it's very difficult to deny it.
Well, that's it. And I think for me, it's great because obviously, as I say, I am a little bit mad with my kids. And don't get me wrong, it's good. It's good heart of fun. Like, as I said, when I'm going around the supermarket and I'm swinging the trolley round, I'm not doing anyone any harm. My kids aren't misbehaving, but they're laughing and things like that. And my mum goes, "You'll have them wild, you'll have them." Whereas now, because I know what I know, and we've done the research we've done, I'm like, actually, mother, I'm developing my child's brain here. And it's not really, when I get into with the arguments and the science, there's not really much you can argue with me, which I absolutely love.
No, you can't complain at that.
Well, that's it. And I think, as I say, I mean, don't get me wrong, Tom, parents have been parenting for millions of years, and our parents did nothing that has caused us any great harm. And I say, like, when I say to my mum, I say, well, I'm developing a brain. And my mum says, well, we didn't do that, and you turned out all right. And I'm like, yeah, I turned out all right, but I don't want my kids to be all right. I want them to be fantastic. Do you know what I mean? And it's your
Yeah,
measure
you're
of
just
all.
building on what's already there, aren't you? That's the thing.
Well, that's it. It's your measure of all right as well. It's what you want for your kids, and like I was brought up very much. Well, like I was pushed to succeed, and that was great. Don't get me wrong, not in a healthy way. It was in a healthy way, and I went on. I've done higher education. I've done an accountancy degree. I've done a law degree. I do what I do now because I love it. Whereas with my children, I'm very much doesn't matter what qualifications you get. It doesn't matter what job you go into. It doesn't matter what you're in. For me, it's as long as my children, I go into the school and my children's kids, and my children's teachers say they're trying. That's what matters to me. The grades don't matter. The jobs don't matter. I just want my kids to be happy.
Yeah, well, that's it, and a lot of it as well is to do with the landscape that you brought up in. You know, like at times have been tough before, and they'll be tough again, and you know, especially nowadays, there's a lot of negativity in the world, and you know, it's tough to get jobs, it's tough to get your own house, you know, it's difficult. It's not a case of if you work hard and you get all your exams, then you're going to be a success. You know, it's just as much about the person as it is about everything else. You know, much like yourself, my degree is in something completely different. My background is in something completely different, and I turned to this job because it's what I wanted to do. And I went through, 29 years of not knowing what I wanted to do and thinking I never would. And then this sort of just fell onto my lap, and I can't see myself doing anything else now. So it's all about, there's more things to life than exams and money. It's more just, doing what you can with what you've got, and having a support network around you, which obviously includes your parents to help you along the way.
Well, that's it. I mean, I'm very similar to yourself, Tom. I'm 42 years old. I've got 2 degrees, and I'm doing a job I didn't know existed 12 months ago.
Yeah,
Literally, I didn't know the job existed. So don't get me wrong, I love it. I've known for a long time that being a dad's a thing, obviously, but the science behind it and everything that I didn't understand the way I understand it now. But it's 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 knowledge I enjoy learning.
yeah,
So I never used my law degree in a work capacity. It was knowledge I wanted because it was something I enjoyed. It was something, and there were certain subjects within the qualifying law degree that I wanted to learn. But to learn them, I had to learn the other stuff that went with it, and that was tedious. I think you're learning constitutional law in a country which doesn't have a constitution,
yeah,
as such,
yeah,
is it can be mind-numbing at times. But I don't think I've done any research in this role where I've been like nodding off. Like I end up clicking on the next article because I want to see what happens next. If you get what I mean,
yeah,
and
yeah,
obviously it is. And when I look back and I look, well, actually, I done that right with my kids, or actually, I could have done that better because we are all human. We don't get everything right, and I think being able to share that knowledge and arm dads with that knowledge on how to bond, how how important that bond is, and how important that bond is to the child and their development and their ability to challenge the world, their ability to risk assess, their ability to socialize, their ability to hold down a healthy relationship when they're older is
yeah.
not something I ever contemplated when I was dealing with my 3-month-old child. But
No,
knowing the difference and the impact them early months and years have to the rest of a child's life is just it blows my mind. It really does.
yeah, no, it's absolutely crazy, and you'd never in a million years imagine that such the small things that we do and we take for granted can have such a massive impact. But like you say, you just have to do your best, and we're not going to do everything perfectly first time around, but every day we're learning, every day we're getting to know our kids that bit better. getting to know ourselves a bit better and our partners, and we just do what we can, do what gets you through, as they say.
That's it. That's it. And do you know what? It's important to remember to enjoy the ride as well, because you blink and
Yeah,
it's gone. You do. You blink. Our baby's 5 now, and my eldest is 23, and I can still, yeah. Oh, sorry, I've just lost the screen. Then I still remember, yeah, them being little, and like now, especially with like our James is like 16, going on 17, but he's as big as me, and like, I'll bump into people and people like that I haven't seen for a while, and they're like, oh, God, he's a man. Do you know what I mean? And to me, he's still my little boy. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
It's madness. It is.
I know. I know. It's crazy. They say the days are long, but the months are quick, isn't it? I'm sitting here with a 3-year-old now, and it feels really not that long ago. I was walking up and down for hours and hours trying to get him to sleep, and it's easy to forget. But yeah, you're right.